Hey guys, today we are going to see if the party can beat Kingdom Hearts 2. First of all, the Roxas prologue won't count since Roxas doesn't have a party. The challenge will only start once we get to play as Sora. The party will only be Donald, Goofy, and whatever world-specific character we get such as Mulan or Orin. When we do start playing as Sora, the challenge is actually very possible. Just like when I did the no attack challenge, Donald and Goofy will be able to fight off all the enemies that Sora will encounter in Twilight Town. I'm not sure if there's a time limit for this encounter to end or if it's a total enemies destroyed, but either way, Donald and Goofy will be able to clear this for Sora without us actually having to do anything. The same thing happens when we are in the mysterious tower. Donald and Goofy will be able to clear the entire tower for Sora without us actually having to attack anyone. It's a bit boring to wait, but it's very possible. I still wasn't completely sure as to what qualifies as a party yet, so I tried my very best to beat this section of the game without actually having Sora attack. I can confirm that Leon is able to defend the gates without Sora attacking anyone. However, we must use the reaction command reversal to get past this section without having Sora attack. That is the only way. I allowed reversal since this technically doesn't damage an enemy. And technically we don't have a party right now, so I should be able to attack. However, we have Leon, so he can beat this part for us. It takes a while, and Sora will have to push some of the Heartless away from the door by just running into them, but it's possible. I also use other reaction commands in this playthrough, which I talked about in this video, as those are the mandatory reaction commands, and they will not be counted, since we can't avoid using them. Please check out the video if you want to know how many reaction commands it takes to beat Kingdom Hearts 2. Also, for those of you wondering, I did this challenge on beginner. Usually I would go with standard difficulty, but I knew this challenge would involve a lot of waiting, so I decided to stack the odds in my favor. I do not regret this, and I am pretty confident that Leon defending the gates without Sora's help is only possible on beginner. The next world that I chose to go to is Mulan's world. Literally the hardest part of this world will be the missions we have to do. The two missions where we fight in this area are possible for our party to defeat. It involves us running around a bit, but they will win in time. The morale gauge will not be a problem for these missions. Just make sure that Sora doesn't take a lot of damage, as that will make the morale meter drop. When we have to do the hide and seek mission in the camp, this is legitimately hard and very luck based. The party must kill all of the enemies. I legit tried this for about 30 minutes and I was very surprised at the result. It is 100% possible for the party to clear this mission. It'll take a lot of tries, but it's possible. What I found that helped a lot is to be ready to switch out Donald and Goofy. Ping is pretty much useless, but we won't be able to switch him out due to story reasons, so we will have to rely on Donald and Goofy. Goofy is good with close range attacks and hitting the Heartless on the ground, and Donald can hit aerial enemies or enemies that are far from us. For most of the fight, I was always on the party switch option. Donald can kill wizards quite easily with thunder, whereas Goofy may just throw his shield, which wastes time. We need Goofy to kill some of the basic Heartless, as we need Donald to finish the fight for us. The morale gauge empties very quickly, so that will be our true enemy during this fight. But with time and enough tries, you should win. Next will be the mountain ascent. You can just lure the enemy away from the rocks. As for the cave in the mountain, well, it's not terrible difficulty-wise, but it's terrible time-wise because it's time-consuming. This took me over 30 minutes to complete. Ping is a trash character. I really hate him or her after this challenge. He doesn't do that much damage and he rarely attacks. Donald and Goofy are far superior to Ping. I didn't know that common enemies had revenge values, but they do. So now we have to fight the first boss of the challenge, Shan Yu. For a lot of bosses, we will have to stand next to them for an embarrassing amount of time. That's just the nature of this challenge. Honestly, I think that Shan Yu probably thought Sora was attracted to him. Anyways, this fight will be where I had to answer some tough questions and actually formalize the rules that I'll be using during this challenge. I'm sure that we all agree that Sora can't actually use the attack command, just like my no attack challenge video, but can he use magic? I don't think so, but I'm allowing the use of cure only. Another question popped up during this fight. If Mickey comes, can he help? Technically, Mickey is not Sora, and Mickey is part of the greater party. I am allowing Mickey to help. He doesn't come frequently, and during the fight something interesting happened. At a certain point, it turns out that Mickey won't be able to damage the boss, as the game creates an HP barrier for some reason. At this point, we will be forced to play as Sora again. The last rule that I will be making is that limits are allowed. The main reason I'm allowing limits is due to one factor. The party cannot kill bosses. If they could kill bosses, I wouldn't use limits. To use limits, we need party members and that specific party members attack during their limit. So I don't think it's a stretch to allow this rule. Luckily for us, Mulan has the red rocket limit that we will use, so we will actually be able to clear the level. I then chose to go to Olympus, and we will have officially failed the challenge here. When we are in Hades' chamber, we are supposed to attack him. Well, I stood next to him and guarded for a couple of minutes, but Sora must attack. The party can't get through this section of the game without Sora attacking. This downhill section is another great example of the challenge. Sora doesn't actually need to be there to escape. Orin and Donald will be able to get through this. It's just a lot of running around in circles and hoping they do something. They'll completely beat all the enemies eventually, but that's the key word there, eventually. And it's essentially the same thing when we have to fight Cerberus and most bosses going forward in this challenge. We will have to run around for about 10 to 15 minutes whilst Orin kills the boss and then end it with a limit. Moving forward in this video, I'll only mention the interesting bosses that don't fit that mold exactly to avoid saying the same thing over and over since there's a lot of waiting. Next we have the orb challenge for Phil. I may have failed the challenge here, but since we don't have a party in the minigame, I won't count it. However, I will count this next part. For the Demix fight, I did fail the challenge a second time. The party cannot kill any of the water clone instruments, so Sora must use reaction commands. We don't have any limits available to us yet, and Donald and Goofy are afraid of water, I guess. Pete is an interesting boss that once again made me start to question how I would say that the party beat the game. The first part of the Pete boss, without Hercules, is very easy, I think. Just don't die. I believe it's on a timer, so you don't actually have to do anything. Just hope that Meg doesn't die. As for the second part of the fight, we must actually fight Pete. As far as I know, there is no way to beat him by just running around and letting the party kill him. Why? We have a timer and the party likes to take their sweet time, so this will make us fail the challenge. However, the question that I asked was if the party damages Pete, but Sora initiates the sequence of events to damage Pete, does it count? I don't know. I'm going to count this as another failure, making this the third time that I failed the challenge. The only way that I found that could kill Pete was us having to use the pinball reaction command. Sora jumps into the air and knocks Pete towards Hercules to punch. Then we just watch the party attack Pete. Sora doesn't technically damage Pete, and when he gets stunned, the party can bring him all the way down to 1 HP within the time limit. However, unlike when we fought Shan Yu in Mulan's world, we will not have a limit to defeat Pete since we don't have any limits yet. Even if we allow the pinball reaction command, we will fail this challenge again since we don't have a limit yet to end it, which is ironic as we unlock the Trinity limit after we beat Pete. This means that Sora will officially fail this fight again. Directly after the Pete fight, we will learn the Trinity limit, which involves both Donald and Goofy, so we will need them both to be alive when we use it. Don't worry though, I won't be spamming it for the rest of the game. With that being said, the Hydra does have some HP barriers where we will have to use the Trinity limit and we will have to use a few reaction commands. These mandatory reaction commands won't count, since Sora must do them. But that aside, this fight is very simple. It's just a lot of waiting. Donald and Goofy have to get the Hydra to a certain HP barrier, then Sora must use a Trinity limit to break the barrier. Then we do a reaction command and repeat the process until we win. The next fight in Beast's Castle will be a great example of most boss fights. Donald and Goofy can get this boss down to 1 HP, but Sora must use Trinity to actually bring the boss's health down to 0 and then trigger a reaction command to release the spirit. This is why we went to Olympus before doing Beast's Castle, as we wanted Trinity limit. When we released the spirit, I was a bit worried since I wasn't sure if the spirit was on a time limit. As far as I know, it's not on a time limit. Donald and Goofy can do enough damage to it so that you shouldn't be in danger of it returning to the door and having to repeat this process 100 times. And now for a spot where I may have failed a challenge, though I won't count this since we technically don't have a party. When we have to escort the lamp and the kettle in the dungeon, these boxes will need to be destroyed. For some reason, the candle can get over the boxes but the kettle can't, so we must attack the boxes. Next will be the Dark Ball fight. This guy is super annoying. What he likes to do is go in these pillars, which are essentially a mini boss. We cannot wait him out, as the only way that Dark Ball will come out of the pillar is if Sora does the final hit when it has 1 HP, and then we do a reaction command. The party cannot get the boss out of the pillar, so we will waste our limit just to get him out. I seriously waited for about 5 minutes before I gave up and used a limit. Overall though, not a difficult fight, just long. The round 2 fight is easier since he doesn't go into objects forever, so we can wait out most of the attacks the boss does and then use a limit. Next will be Disney Castle. I wasn't too sure about Minnie using her faith command on the enemies, so basically what I did was just let her fight and then call her. I think using the fate command with Minnie would be allowed, but I can confirm now that it is possible for Minnie to get through the entire escort segment without Sora doing anything other than just saying this way. In Timeless River, we will fail the challenge for a 4th time. Guys, I tried this for about an hour, but there is no way to get through this area without using the attack command. Just like when we fought in the Mulan world with the morale gauge, there is now a mayhem gauge. If the gauge gets too high, which it will, we will lose. In particular, the hardest room to get through with the party is Mickey's house. I thought that Trinity limit would be enough to get us through the game, but for Mickey's house it's not. The mayhem gauge increases just a bit too quickly for us to make it work. And yes, I used a bunch of ethers and just spammed them from the start, but that didn't work either. Our troubles won't yet be over when we have to fight Pete on the boat. I have failed the challenge again, maybe. I'm not sure if this should be counted, but the party is not able to damage Pete. Sora must swing the keyblade. This will be the 5th time that we fail the challenge since the party is technically present. In Port Royal, one of the coolest things about the ship fights is that you don't actually need to fight. When you set sail for a destination, just run back inside to this room and you'll avoid having to fight. When we do get forced into the medallion fight, the party can get through it without Sora, but this will be another wait. I did get this really cool ending for the Barbossa fight. When I used Jack's limit, it killed a chameleon, but then Barbossa just got sucked into the treasure chest and I won. In Halloween Town, we will have to fight Lock, Shock, and Barrel, and there will be an HP barrier, so Sora will need to attack the boss when we eventually reach its HP barrier. I didn't know this, but if you guard against the fireballs, they will be reflected and actually damage the boss. This wasn't meant to damage the boss, so I just reset the fight. Of course, I sort of gave up on waiting for this boss. Since Donald and Jack are out of range or something, I recommend just spamming Dance Call as it does a lot of damage. The Oogie Boogie fight is definitely something I want to talk about. It is 100% possible, guys. First of all, we have to allow the use of reaction commands to hit the boxes back up, and we have to allow Sora to change lanes. There's no way around that. However, once you knock down Oogie Boogie, the party can actually damage him for the entire time that he is dazed, so you will be able to beat him this way. You just need to end the fight with a limit, but we have Dance Call for that. A potential problem that I had is that your party may be on a different lane when you knock Oogie down. Obviously, they need to be on Sora's lane as they need to damage Oogie. This is easily fixed as all you have to do is change party member A with party member B, and now party member B will magically be standing next to Sora on the correct lane with Oogie. Even if you have enemies on a lane that you don't want to deal with, you can just switch lanes and the enemies will vanish from existence. I then went to Pride Lands for the Circle of Life Keyblade. It'll help with our MP recharge, so we will have to wait less time to use limits. We don't actually need to beat the level, we just need to get to the area where Simba joins the party and we will be good. In Tron's world, when we have to attack the door to get clusters, we don't technically have a party, so I won't count this. As for when we have to attack the cubes, I won't count that either as it's a minigame, but we can potentially fail the challenge again in these two scenarios. To my surprise, when we were in the computer room, I was able to clear it. I was expecting this to be another point where I failed the challenge, but the enemies release plenty of clusters, so we will be able to get through this part. Now we have Demix. Demix is incredibly hard. Unlike when we fought him in Olympus, we now have access to two limit commands, Trinity and Comet, and both shall be used. Just like in Olympus, Donald and Goofy cannot defeat a single water clone that Demix summons, so we will have to do all of the work. What I found that worked best for the water clones was to use the limit Comet. It may do less damage than Trinity, but it does multiple attacks to the water clones. For the first phase of the water clones, when you have to destroy 100, Comet is almost required because the duration of Donald's final Comet reign lasts a few seconds, so it can destroy a lot of the clones. I also recommend having the monochrome keyblade and the item boost ability if you have it unlocked. We need ethers to bring back Sora's magic in a flash, and I used all the ethers in my items menu for this fight, so don't bother trying to conserve your ethers here. You can buy more of them by the Moogle shop. As for when you defeat the first round of water clones, you can let Donald and Goofy attack, but your main way of damaging Demix will be by using the Trinity limit. I struggled a lot with whether I wanted the monochrome keyblade or the Circle of Life keyblade. I ended up going with monochrome just because I wanted an extra item boost. We will need to rely on MP haste during this fight, but the timer forces us to need MP instantly rather than faster. The key thing about this fight is that you don't want to give Demix a lot of downtime. You or the party need to damage him. I think that makes him do a mini water clone attack, but overall this fight wasn't bad. Just make sure to have only ethers equipped, at least one item boost ability, and preferably one MP haste ability. He legit is one of the tougher bosses in the challenge to do. When you do defeat him, the Final Fantasy characters can clear the way for Sora, getting to the 1000 Heartless fight, so you won't actually have to do anything there. And when we do get to the 1000 Heartless fight, we will fail the challenge again, but we don't have a party, so attacking is allowed. And it's a similar story when we fight Riku in Land of Dragons. We don't actually have a party, so Sora will be forced to attack. When we have to fight the dragon though, things are a bit interesting. This boss was surprisingly easy. Normally our party would fall off the dragon, but if we use the same trick that we learned when we fought Oogie Boogie, things will be easier. If we switch party members when we are on the top of the dragon, they will magically appear at the top of the dragon, and we will be able to damage the boss. Of course, we can use Mulan's limit on top of the boss to speed things up, so this fight isn't too bad. Now we have to fight Xaldin in Beast's castle. Guys, there's good news and bad news. There is no timer in this fight, but Xaldin casts his arrow shield around himself, so our party won't actually be able to damage him. But that doesn't matter since we have Beast and we can spam his limit. I was not messing around in this fight. I immediately used Twin Howl, and that's my only advice for this challenge. Spam Twin Howl. When I ran out of MP after using Twin Howl, I just ran around until MP recharge and use it again. I think that this limit may be overpowered. Then Xaldin rode around whilst Twin Howl recharged, and I did actually have to use an ether to speed up MP recovery. When I was about to die, I used Twin Howl for the third and final time, and I was able to beat Xaldin in the cheapest way possible. I struggled with this boss for hours as a kid, and here I am cheesing a boss. Mickey didn't even show up. Next will be Port Royal, and the main difficulty will be defeating the Grim Reaper round 2. I recommend having Jack and Donald in your party. Both of them can knock all of the medallions out of the Grim Reaper. The problem is that this medallion loop can last forever if you put the medallions back in the chest, on the third phase of the fight. What I recommend is just holding on to all of the medallions so the Grim Reaper doesn't steal them from the chest again. It's easier said than done, but it's very possible. I also recommend being stocked with only ethers, but only giving them to Donald. You don't need to do this, but it helps with the waiting. Once we have to fight the magic carpet in Agrabah, we won't have a party, so I won't count anything that happens in this world. And we're basically almost done with the game at this point. We go back to Twilight Town and watch Mickey fight and then Axel fight. In the world that never was, 3 fights won't be counted: Roxas, Luxord, and Xemnas. We won't have a party for those 3 bosses, so Sora will have to fight. As for Sayax and Xigbar, they both follow the standard strategy of this playthrough: use a limit and then let the party attack whilst MP recharges. Very standard. Hopefully Donald cures Sora somewhere during this time, and if he doesn't, use a potion. And for those of you wondering, you actually don't need to hit the bullets back at Xigbar when he's sniping at you. You can just wait out his attack. He'll then yell, "Moving out." And for Sayax, you will also have to wait for when his berserk meter empties to use a limit, but you shouldn't have too much trouble. And with that, we are in the endgame. We can use Riku's session limit from the cylinder boss all the way to the final fight against final Zebra Man Xemnas. There are no timers left in the game, so we have all the time in the world to wait for our party to defeat the bosses, and we can use Riku's session limit until we beat the game. I did have some mild difficulty when fighting final Zebra Man Xemnas, but that's only because Xemnas has long laser attacks. And all that was needed to beat the game was do our final limit to kill Xemnas, and fittingly, Riku beat the game for us. So can the party beat Kingdom Hearts 2? No, we failed this challenge a minimum of 5 times. The first 3 failures all occur during our first trip to Olympus. The first failure occurs in Hades' chamber, as we must swing the keyblade or use magic. We can't wait out Hades. The second failure occurs with Demix. Donald and Goofy cannot kill water clones, and we did not yet gain the Trinity limit. The third failure occurs during the Pete fight for the same reasons. We can get his health down to 1 HP by using the pinball reaction command, which probably isn't allowed, but even if it were, we will then have no way to actually kill Pete. The fourth and fifth failures both occur in Timeless River. The fourth failure occurs in Mickey's house. The mayhem meter fills up a bit too quickly, so we must attack. A possible solution may just be to go up 20 levels or so and then do the fight, so I might try that again at a later date, but I don't think it'll work. The fifth failure occurs during the Pete boat fight. We must swing the keyblade to damage him. Of course, failing the challenge 5 times can be a lot higher if I want it to be. Minigames such as the Phil training in Olympus or Tron's cluster minigames can bring the count up. Solo fights against bosses like Luxord and Roxas can easily double the number of times we fail the challenge as well. And lastly, the failure count doesn't include anything from the second visit to Agrabah, as well as the entirety of the Roxas prologue. Parts of this challenge that were exceptionally long and drawn out were the cave fight with Mulan and the Grim Reaper boss. The time you need for those 2 fights will be the longest in the challenge. I do not recommend doing this. Beat Kingdom Hearts 2 without jumping. That's more fun. Sorry if I went too fast or skipped over some story areas, as I didn't want this video to be too long. I hope you all enjoyed my video. Leave a comment telling me what you thought, or if you have another challenge for me. Please do the stuff that the YouTube algorithm likes, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.
See you soon.